Hello from my kitchen. I have been on a crazy baking marathon. So over here, we've got some braided challah bread, some traditional sourdough. We've got some cinnamon swirl bread. It is a regatta weekend for my daughter and son who are on the rowing team, and we always try to feed them lots of food because they burn tons of energy while they're rowing. So this weekend, they're going to get piles of food. Now I'm going to experiment a little and see about making a dark brown braided bread. I love dark brown bread, and I'm never quite satisfied with the challah bread flavor and texture. It's just not my favorite. It tastes really store-bought, kind of stale to me. And so I'm going to try to refine that with some tweaks. We'll just see as we go. So the first thing we're going to do is start with our sourdough starter. I'm going to use about 100 grams of the starter, or about a cup or so. It doesn't have to be an exact science. Just got starter on my shirt. But I have my scale going, so I can actually turn on my scale to grams. I don't know if you can see my scale. And I'm going to zero it out, and I'm just going to watch that scale as I scoop in. And a couple little scoops will be good. And then I always want to save about a half cup so I can feed it and start again. And I've done quite a bit of baking, so maybe running down to our last little bit. Okay, that's perfect. We've got about 100 grams in there. And then to that, I'm going to add about 185 grams of water. Not too hot, not too cold. I don't filter mine. Some people who notice they have harsh chemicals in their water will filter it, but my tap water works just fine for me. All right. And then I'm going to add 2 eggs, and these are my beautiful brown eggs from my friend Ashley, and they always give it the bread such a good color. Farm fresh eggs, sometimes you do need to use an extra egg because they're quite a bit smaller than a store-bought egg, and so it just looks different. So you kind of have to play it by ear. I'm going to go ahead and throw that third one in. And then I'm going to substitute, where I would normally use honey in the challah bread, I'm going to substitute some molasses and see how that turns out to give it that dark, rich color. And then the other thing that I'm going to put in there is black cocoa powder. So cocoa powder adds a nice dark color to our normal pumpernickel that we would make. And black cocoa is even darker than that. It's super alkalized, and it's that kind of signature color of an Oreo cookie. It's different than the regular cocoa and kind of a different chocolatey flavor. So I'm going to try to put some of that in there with my flour when I mix that in to see if we can duplicate some of that pumpernickel flavor. So my molasses, it's also going to add some sweetness and a nice brownness as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put in about 40 grams. Not a ton, maybe about a third a cup. And then I'm going to mix those. So I've got this sweet little mix of stuff. Mix those. And now challah bread has lots of oil in it, and we add the oil after we've added the flour, just to give the time for the flour to absorb the liquids before we put that oil in it. And then we add the oil once some absorption has happened. So it's not the end of the world if you throw it all in and mix, but the rationale there is that when we give time to the grains to soak in the liquids, then we don't have the oil like coating over the grain. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to add is about a half a kilogram of flour. I have bread flour here, and I also have some dark rye flour. So I'm going to get my scale out and kind of eyeball it, and then part of my cocoa is going to go in as the weight of that flour as well. So I'm going to put in about 425 grams. All right. Went over a little bit, but that'll be all right. And then just about 50 grams of the rye flour. We do use some rye flour in pumpernickel, but it does not bind the same way as red flour, so we can't use strictly rye flour. This is that black cocoa, super dark, looks like potting soil. It's got a nice flavor, big puff, and it will give it a really good color. I'm going to mix those things together, and then I'm going to kind of watch that it comes together. We will have salt in this bread. That wouldn't be very good if we didn't have salt, but we're going to do the same thing, waiting for the flour and water to mix together, giving it a little time to absorb before we throw in the salt. It doesn't make a huge impact the way oil might, but will help. Now, one thing that we usually add that I haven't added to the challah bread is coffee water or old coffee or potato water. Potato starch and potato water. I'm just adding a little water left. My bread's a little dry because I overdid it on the flour a little bit. Those potato flour or coffee, they lend that dark color. The coffee lends it that dark color, and the potato flour keeps it really nice and moist. So as I tweak this recipe, that may be part of it eventually, but for now my water is just the same. One way that I make potato water, because I don't boil water and potatoes very much, is I'll just mix a little bit of instant potato flakes into the water, into warm water, let it kind of slurry, and then just use that where it calls for water. So this is coming together, still kind of a different color, really beautiful color, and I think that's going to braid up really nicely. So I'm going to give it a little time, take off my rings, knead it up, and then it's going to rest for 30 minutes. And then I'm actually going to add my salt then, and about a half a cup of oil. So I maybe overdid it on the water. Sourdough does okay being extra moist. The aroma is great. It does have that yeasty kind of smell, but then a little chocolate smell and a little molasses. Smell it, Georgia? What do you think?
I don't really smell it.
You don't smell anything. Well, it's got a nice smell, so that'll be nice. So I'm going to give it some time, just in a ball like this. Sticky is fine. And then in about 30 minutes, I'll check on it and add our oil and salt.